Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition with My Faith, Homer and Pip. And my heart, it's a sunny day. It is kind of cold and blustery, but there's warmth in my heart because I'm with one of my best friends, Steve the Homer True, and our good buddy Brett Young behind the camera. And we have an angel with us here at Angel's Grace in Oconomowoc. Her name is Susan Matuka. Homer, lead us off and take us away.
I feel everybody goes, okay, here he goes again. Because it's just about everybody's story of their faith, and you can begin wherever you want.
Well, like I said before, my faith started back really a long time ago, probably when I was like 6 years old. I just knew that I wasn't alone.
At 6?
At 6, yeah.
Why? How?
My auntie lived with us. She actually would be my great auntie. And she was the most incredible woman that you ever want to meet. And she was so faithful and she loved the Lord. And there was just something about her. My mom had a lot of children, and so my auntie sometimes stepped in and was like, your mother. And I just really was so attached to her. And she was the first person that I actually held the hand when she passed away. And I wasn't afraid. Even being that small of a child, I just knew where she was going. And that's kind of how it started for me, and I just always knew. But then as I was growing, I'd watch.
Hold on. Did she talk to you, or was it you just observing her and how she lived?
How she lived. On Friday nights, our house would be filled with people. It was like the Dowski house. We lived by Wauwatosa West. And if you didn't have a place to go, you came to our house. And I mean, either move in and live with us. My parents had 3 older boys that didn't have places to go, so they came and lived with us. And our house was always full. And I remember Friday nights, my mom would make this huge bowl of popcorn, and we'd all sit on the floor and watch movies. And my auntie would come into the living room, and she'd pick somebody out, and she'd come and sit by you, and she'd get really close, and she'd go like this. And you're like, okay, what's that all about? And then you'd feel something get slipped into your hand, and she would give you one little chocolate kiss. And you knew that she loved you. You know, she took that time out of having all these children in the house, that you were special. And I'm telling you, I'll never forget that lady. But then as we grew, I watched my parents. My parents were very faithful. My father, we could be out camping and there would be nothing in sight. And my dad would be missing from the camper. And he'd come running in and he goes, I found a church. And all the kids in the camper would go, can we just miss one Sunday? And my dad's like, no, we found a church. Get dressed, get ready, we're going. And so he was a faithful man. My father taught us never, ever, ever walk by somebody, look down at them, because you might be entertaining an angel unaware. You know, and I put that in my dad's obituary. My dad met a friend at the end of his life over at Mayfair Mall. His name was Jerry. And my parents were having troubles, well, my dad was, because they had the 13th kid that they had fostered. They adopted that last boy. And they were having troubles with him. And my dad would go to see Jerry at the mall, and Jerry was homeless. And for some reason, whatever we said to my pa didn't seem to get through. But when Jerry would say, well, Ralph, don't worry about your son. He'll be okay. He says, I've been homeless for a really long time. Your kid will be okay. And then my dad had a heart attack, and he was in the hospital. And I went to Mayfair Mall. I don't even know why. God just said, you know what? Go to Mayfair Mall and find Jerry. And I said to my pa, what does Jerry look like? And he told me. He'd be very good at a police lineup. I went to the mall. I saw the guy sitting there, long black trench coat, a black hat, beard. You could only see his eyes. And I walked up to him and I said, are you Jerry? And he said, I am. And I said, well, I'm Ralph's daughter. And then he started to just open up and pour. Your dad takes me to McDonald's for breakfast, and your dad brings me shoes, and your dad. I said, Jerry, my dad's in the hospital. And I said, he was talking about you and what a difference you've made in his life. And so we kind of just chatted for a while, and I knew that my dad was taking care of him, and I felt like, gee, I want to do a little something for you. But I'd never want to insult someone. And I said, Jerry, I just have this little wallet, and I put a little heart on it, a pin, and I put some money in it. And I said, you know what? I put a little picture of my dad's face on the inside. I said, here's a little something just to help you out while my pa's in the hospital. I said, it's not a handout. I said, it's a hand up. I said, every time you open this wallet and you see my pa's face, I said, remember to say a prayer for him. Well, time goes on and my pa passes away, and I went to find Jerry again, and I told him that my pa had passed away, and he said, I'm sorry. He goes, I haven't been able to be here at the mall because they kicked me out because I was eating food out of the garbage. And I felt like it was because my pa wasn't there, he wasn't getting his food. So that was really sad, but it's just, it's amazing the people that you will meet, and it's like my dad always told us, just don't walk past someone when they look like they're down. And my folks took care of the Rosebud Indian Reservation out in South Dakota for 43 years. And they made trucks back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Someone would write, I've been given a government trailer and I need some furniture. So they'd put out the call. And everybody, all the schools in Wauwatosa, they would call my mom and say, come pick up the boxes of hats and mittens and gloves that were left over. We call everybody, get furniture, and take it out to the reservation and do what we could do. And this is how through osmosis, I watched my parents do what they do, and it was amazing. And they never stopped until they passed away.
And to your faith, that was as if you feel you're in the presence of God, or how did your faith fit with how you viewed your parents?
Because we are to be servants of God. I always knew from little on that I was going to be a servant just like my parents. I'd walk him back and forth from school and come home for lunch. My first big mission, this lady sitting on the porch, and I'd look at her, and I thought, boy, you look so sad. I think I was 10 years old. And I just kept every day back and forth. She's sitting on the porch. And one day I finally just got the nerve up and I waved at her. And she waved back. And I ended up having to clean her house. I would go to her house once a week. And I don't know if she wanted to see if I was cleaning well or if I was going to keep the pennies she hid. So every time I'd go there, I'd have a handful of pennies. And I'd set them on the kitchen table, and I'd say, okay, I'm all done cleaning. I'll see you next week. And I just found that to be really interesting. But she was an elderly lady, and I get it from my pa. I am totally hooked on old people. They have so much to say, and they're so interesting. But that lady, Mrs. Duchesne, she was the first person that I knew this was going to be.
I always follow up to now you're growing up, you have friends. Were you known as the Mother Teresa at 6? I have somebody at 6 and I'm going, you okay? I understand.
She is the Mother Teresa of Angel's Grace.
But then so you have friends, and then is that what they knew you for? And then you get older, then you're a teenager. There are all these times to me that it can be difficult to continue on. I don't know that it was for you. And people have an up and a down. I don't sense there ever was a down, but how did your friends and your acquaintances your own age look at you?
The weird thing is that I would go to my friend's house and I would end up sitting in the kitchen talking to their mothers while they're all out playing. Oh, let me help you dry your dishes. I don't know. I was always the one saying, oh, we can't do that, we'll get in trouble. So that was kind of, I don't know. I think I was born 40 years old. I met my husband when I was 13. I got engaged when I was 16.
Excuse me? Did you talk to God about that?
Yes, I had to. But trying to get my parents to understand that this was real. Because of course my parents would say, oh, in a week you'll say John, who? And here we are 48 years later.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 18.
Oh, okay.
I was 18, and I had that big dream, that God said you're going to get married, you're going to have 6 kids, and you're going to live happily ever after.
And?
It didn't go exactly that way.
Was your husband as driven and faith-filled as you were, and was that something you were looking at for a partner?
No, my husband was not as faith-filled. I don't want to hurt his feelings, but he went, twice a year, Christmas and Easter, like a lot of people do.
And you were okay with that?
I was okay with that.
That seems odd.
I was okay with that. I guess I thought I could change him.
The only woman ever to think she could change your husband. We've met you.
Yes. So we said, well, you know what? It's okay. We tried to go to his church. We tried to go to my church. We'd go back and forth. And I said, this is okay. But I said, I think that when we have children, we probably should raise them one way so that they aren't confused. And he was good with that. So we got married, and 2 years after that, we had our first little girl, and her name was Jennifer. And the pregnancy was perfect, and she was born, and they took her away immediately, and we were like, wow, what's going on here? And the room just filled with people, and it was chaotic, and they're like, oh, we're not really sure what's going on right now. And I had seen her, like, as they were whipping her away, she looked like she had purple marker drawn around her lips. And before I knew it, then the neonatologist came in and said to us that your daughter is born with a rare heart defect. So we didn't get to see her for quite a while. And she lived for almost 2 years. She was born in 82, she died in 84. And she was only the 10th baby that we knew of, and they said the whole world that had her disease. And she actually was the longest living truncus baby. And I'm telling you, if I could buy a house for every one of those nurses at Children's that took care of us for all that time, I would.
You think of that? I'm thinking, we've lived this life and we've helped so many people, and God, why do you do this? I mean, at some point there's a peace of mind, but that
well, no, not in the beginning, because in the beginning you're just like trying to struggle. You know that you have a child that God says, you know what? I'm going to give her to you. I'm lending her to you. You won't get to keep her forever. We all think we get a child and we're going to get to keep them for a really long time. But I have found out that that is not exactly true. So I told my husband one time, I said, honey, you know what? I don't ever want to go home to an empty house. I don't know that I could do that. So we talked to a geneticist, and they did their studies of like, what happened to Jennifer? How did she get this way? And they said it was a genetic defect, but it was not hereditary. So we thought, okay. And he said to us, well, you know what? Usually when you have a child that's your first child and it's severely defected, your second will always be less. So we thought, oh, okay. We know we're supposed to be parents.
Then came Sarah.
And then came my daughter, Sarah, who blew all the rules out of the water because she had 3 times as many problems as our first daughter. She was born with a genetic defect, chromosome 17, which is, the children are born, the American Medical Association says that they're girls because they have the outward appearance, but they have no reproductive systems. She had a malformation on the left side of her face that would have had to have been drained and then like plastic surgery. And then she had a double cyst on her spinal column, which left her quadriplegic. But in 1984, the doctor said to us, if she is born and she takes a breath, they have to put her on a ventilator. He said, but the bad thing is that she could lay there for 20 years with no quality of life. And he said, we don't want to do that. He said, look what Jennifer is going through. So he said, in my best guesstimate, she will die within the next 5 weeks. So then you have to go around, try to maintain your life. I'm trying to take care of Jennifer, and people are asking you, oh, you're pregnant, when is your baby due? And you don't know what to say to people, because yes, I'm having a baby, but no, I'm not getting to keep her. So she passed away 3 days short of that 5 weeks, and Paul Schrampke from Schrampke Funeral Home called me. And he said, your friend Chris called and said that your child had died. We would like to do your services for you, and we'll take care of it, everything. I was like, wow, okay. And then 5 weeks later, I had to call him again and say, my daughter Jennifer passed away. And he started to cry on the phone. And he said, well, do you want to bring her to us, or do you want us to come and get her? I said, no, please come and get her. And I'll never forget going to see her for the last time before they were going to put her in her little casket. And Paul Schrampke just was in tears. I'd never seen a funeral director in tears. And he said, I have to tell you, he said, I went home last night and I wanted to get a blanket for your little girl. And he said, I went into the attic, and then I went down into my son's room, and he said, I held him a little bit tighter, and I said, well, he had to learn all these lessons the hard way. And as a parent, I feel guilty, and I felt guilty for my parents and my families having to endure all these sad things that had happened. And that makes it really difficult, because now you're like, okay, my children have passed, but I'm making all these people feel bad, and my mother was just struggling with all of it. And you just get really overwhelmed. But time goes by, and I would never have believed it, because I always said, if one more person says to me, well, now you have 2 angels in heaven, I thought, I'm going to beat them.
What, the first humanness of any part of your story? I wondered if we were going to ever get it.
I did get the humanness, and I just kept saying, God, why are you doing this to me? I didn't feel that I deserved, not that anybody would deserve it, but I'm like, what did I do so bad that you would, take my children from me? And as time goes by, I don't know how it came to me. It hit me in the head one day. Well, actually, and I think I told you this, I cried for probably 5 years. And I just thought, are these tears ever going to stop, And I was in the house, and the TV was on, and I usually don't watch Dr. Phil. He's not one of my favorite people. But I heard him talking, and I thought, well, what is he saying? So I sat down, and there was a young girl there on the TV. She was with her mother, and her older sister had been murdered. And the young girl wrote to Dr. Phil to say, listen, you need to speak to my mother, because she doesn't understand that though one daughter is gone, I am still here, and I need my mother. And Dr. Phil pulled the mom in front of him, and they sat knee to knee and held hands. And Dr. Phil said to this lady, I'm going to tell you a story. And the story goes that every night at midnight, Jesus takes a midnight candlelit walk with all of the children in heaven. And there was one little girl in the group, and she saw this other little girl sitting on a bench. And that girl walked over to the little girl and said, why don't you go on the candlelight walks with Jesus at midnight? And she said, I can't. She said, because my mother's tears keep putting my candle out. And it was like goosebumps, not stopping.
Dr. Phil.
Yes. And she said, I can't go because my mother's tears keep putting my candle out. And it hit me so strongly that I knew from that day on that I was not going to cry anymore, because I certainly did not want my children sitting on the bench and not walking with Jesus at midnight with their candles lit.
You have battled MS
Yes,
and cancer.
yes,
You have lost a brother to suicide.
yes.
And yet we look at you and we see an angel. We see someone with joy and peace. How do you do it? How do you reconcile all the suffering?
Well, it's always hard, but I do believe that God has said to me, I want you to take the lessons that you are learning, and I want you to go out and I want you to use them to help other people. And I'm so for that, because when you get these diseases or the loss of my brother or my parents, the MS, my children, if I didn't do something with them to try to help the next person, then why did this all happen? And I've told many people that would be the real travesty, is that I never did anything good with it. I always use my children for teaching. I want to honor them, you know. I want people to know that they were here. I want people to know that, you know what, after your child has died, you are going to smile again. You are. And the first time it happens, you're going to feel so guilty that you're smiling and people are looking at you. Oh my God, she's smiling and she just lost her children. It's okay. It's okay. I was in a bathroom, in a stall, on my brother's 40th birthday, maybe 40th. And I heard someone say, I can't believe she's smiling. And I didn't know how to take it, because I only heard a little bit of what was going on in the bathroom. So now I'm sitting in there thinking, oh my God, I'm smiling. I'm happy I'm here with my brother and it's his big birthday. But yet they're looking at me thinking, how can she smile? But it's really, you just have to accept when God gives you little messages, you have to be open to get them. And it was like with my cancer. This is so amazing. I got the cancer, and I got my cancer diagnosis on February 26th. Now, my daughter died on February 26th. And you can say, just a coincidence. I don't believe that at all. February 26th, I thought, okay, so Jennifer, are you here to tell me that you're going to be with me through this whole cancer thing? Or were you coming to take me home? And that was my fear. And we had to move quickly. It is an aggressive cancer. Excuse me. And I show up to the hospital. My husband and my grandson take me down the hall. We meet the lady, and she says, oh, we have 23 suites, but today you're going to be in suite 18. My husband and I stop dead in our tracks, and we look at each other with tears. My daughter Jennifer was born on August 18th. I mean, is it a coincidence? Or again, is my daughter trying to tell me that she's going to be with me? So I'm in my room getting ready. Some lady runs in the room haphazardly, and she says, oh, hi. She says, now don't worry, I'm going to be with you every single minute of the way. And I'm thinking, well, who are you? And I said, who are you? And she goes, oh, I'm sorry. She goes, I'm your anesthesiologist. And I said, okay. And then she goes, well, I suppose I should introduce myself. And I said, well, that would be really good. And she goes, my name is Joan. My mother died of breast cancer, and my mother's name was Joan. And I started to cry, and she said, why are you crying? I said, I'm crying because my mother's name was Joan. I said, and my mother died of cancer. She said, don't worry. She said, I'm going to be with you the whole time. And she started to cry. And she said, I want to tell you, I wasn't scheduled for your surgery. She said, I got a call at the last minute. That's why I was running. And again, I just was like, I'm like, okay, Mom. I go, everybody's here except my pa. But it was truly amazing. And I went into the surgery knowing that my mom and my daughter were going to be with me. And that was really cool. I just couldn't believe that.
I have nothing left to ask.
I guess I would just close by asking you, the faith that you will see your loved ones again, does this give you the grace to keep going, Susan?
Oh, yeah. I have had recurring dreams over the years, and they are so vivid and so spot on. And I see my auntie standing at the gates of heaven, and she's cradling my daughter Sarah. She has a little girl by the hand, which I know is Jennifer, and Jennifer is standing there like this, and there's a little yellow bird on her finger. And we also had a little yellow parakeet pass away. But I see that, and I know that my loved ones will be there when it's my time. I'm just so sure. I have to say, one time I was volunteering here, and God puts you in the right room with the right people. And this woman said to me, she said, I had a dream last night. And she said, it was my son, but my son committed suicide. And right then I thought, I know why he put me in this room. And he had a child, a small child with him. And she said, and I had a baby pass away. She said, do you think that that could have been my child? I said, without a doubt, that was your child. And then when I left, I kind of thought, she was in really good shape. And I thought, she'll be with us for a while, so I'll have an opportunity to talk with her again. And when I came back the next week, they told me that she had passed that night. And I, in my heart, feel that, she just needed to be reassured that her children were going to be there when she got there. And it was really amazing. And I just thought, oh my God, I'm so glad you put me in that room. Because I could have had any room on the floor, but that's the one I went into. And it was just, it was beautiful. And I'm sure that those were her children.
Angel's Grace Hospice in Oconomowoc is a beautiful place, and it seems fitting that you work here, volunteer here.
Yeah.
Susan Matuka, thank you for your faith story.
You're welcome.
We know it will touch many people. We're blessed by it. I know you talked to God. You said you were going to pray about doing this, and we're grateful that He said yes. So
Yes.
Thank you, and God bless you
You're
and
welcome.
your loved ones. We appreciate it very
And your
much.
smile given your life is amazing.
Thank you.
That should be the last thing we say, but we'll close with, this has been My Faith with Homer and Pip. Thank you for being a part of it.